Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. My name is 12 Gauge, and welcome to my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. I know that you've probably been watching Nina and other kinds of chats and creators. I hope that, you enjoy what I'm about to present because it's something that I had done a long time ago, and it only got like 57 views at the time. So I thought I'd reboot it because um it kind of goes along with what people are talking about as far as the Gainesville Ripper. And if you don't know anything about it, um I kind of go into depth about Danny Rowland and exactly how these two really coincide together more than Bundy. Um but there's other theories out there, so I just wanted to get on and basically just come spend a little time with you guys. You know, sometimes Saturday nights are for winners, and it's hard to be on the sideline sometimes whenever you're a winner. You get what I'm saying? So I thought I'd get on here and do what I do. So I hope y'all enjoy this because there is a double dose of 12 gauge. This is me 9 months ago. So is please give this story a chance because it kind of echoes a lot of what the Idaho 4 stuff happened and how it happened. And it was in Gainesville, in the Florida town, where Florida State University is, I believe. So, you know, I thought I'd present it to you guys, and I'm on some eggnog, bro. So this stuff is like running through my brain right now, and I'm just like, "Bzzz." So let me say hi to the people in the chat right quick. Leslie and Billy, thank you for being here. Rondé, hey, Aquarius, and I'm sure a lot of other people will eventually make it once those other chats kind of round up, once they're done. I don't get on just to compete with anybody. Like I've always told you, I compete with myself. But I wanted to present this because not only did we discuss it in the two live that I did last night, um, with Dr. Vona. And if you haven't gone and checked out her channel, please do so. She has a lot of interesting videos and she's very intellectual about her stuff, very analytical. So go check out her stuff. If you haven't checked out Nina's channel, go check out Nina's channel. And we have a celebrity in here by the name of Aquarius Yaya. She has a channel called, my God, I can never remember it. Cannabis, Coffee, and Chaos? Yaya, please forgive me. I can never remember your channel name, but please put the link in the chat. That way people can go and find you. That is not a shade on you. I can never remember that name. Please put your link in the chat as well as the other two that I've named. Thank you. Cannabis, I don't know. Cannabis. It sounds cool. Cannabis, chaos, and coffee. I don't know. Something like that, right? Is it cannabis, coffee, and chaos? Is that what it's called? Anyways, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize. Please put that link in the chat, please. And let's go ahead and get started with this video. I hope you enjoy this guide 12 gauge because this was me 9 months ago. 9 months ago. So I don't know if much has changed. Sometimes people say, you know, cannabis chaos, coffee, cannabis, and chaos. Oh, I was right. Awesome. Awesome. I feel better now knowing that I was correct. Well, here we go. Here we go. Let's listen to 12 and see what he has to say about the situational events. Let's go, 12. I've had some subscribers. They've commented. I've enjoyed reading the comments. And it's always nice to get kind words, or, if you watch one of my videos and I make a mistake or the information's not correct, it's okay. I can take constructive criticism. Just don't be rude. All right. So I know there's not a lot going on in the Idaho 4 case that I really want to discuss right now as far as trials and things of that nature. I mean, there's documents and everything coming out, but I'm not one of those document people that break stuff down and discuss things. I'm more analytical, where I try to piece things together. And if you notice, the title of my video is called "KOHBERGER, Is He Like the Gainesville Ripper?" Well, I did a video a while back on the Gainesville Ripper, and it caught my interest because I could see the similarities between the two. So tonight, I'd like to kind of go through the Gainesville Ripper history. His name is Danny Rowland. That was his name, and I'd like to go through the history, even though it's probably been talked about a multitude of times. If you hear a dog barking in the background, please don't stress. It just, my buddy.
Yes, sirree. Yes, sirree. My buddy.
Okay, the true story of Danny Rowland, the Gainesville Ripper, who inspired the hit movie Scream. Over the course of 4 days, serial killer Danny Rowland terrorized the college students of Gainesville, Florida in a murderous rampage. Danny Rowland lived an unhappy life. A tortured soul since birth, Rowling, aka the Gainesville Ripper, passed on the horrifying abuse he'd endured onto his victims.
Okay, let's stop right
There's
there.
Mr.
Let's stop right
Rowland
there
over the course of 4 days.
because you know how I like to break down stuff, and that's what I was thinking about this whole case, about the abuse that he endured, which he passed on to others. Not saying that Koberger was the same way. I'm not saying that he was abused or any of that stuff. I'm just saying that it's a known fact that if you're abused or you're exposed to any kind of trauma or violence, and once that stops, you pick it up, and sometimes you turn it on yourself. Sometimes you either turn it on yourself by abusing chemicals, by being in dysfunctional relationships, you name it. You pick it up where it leaves off. So let's say that you were raised in a family where you were terribly abused, verbally, physically, and then you finally said, okay, one day I'm going to get out of here. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to let this shit happen to me, right? So you make it out of that family and you feel the freedom for the first time and you go wild. But during that wildness supplies your ability to cope with life only so much, because the wildness equals chaos, which what the abuse had in common with your life. So once you decide, okay, I'm living too fast, I need to slow it down, then the abuse cycle kicks in, the emotional, physical abuse. So by that time, you probably teamed up with somebody who is not a great person, whether it be a male or female, however, your relationship status is. So you team up with somebody who's not the best for you. So they start abusing you physically and emotionally, right? So even though you don't enjoy it, it brings a sense of calmness to you that you haven't had in a long time. And for a lot of people, they say, "Well, that's not cool. That's not okay." But if you've endured through this life as a child, as an adolescent, you know how to cope through that type of abuse. And I've always read that if people, and I'm going to get back to the story, I'm just long winded. I've always read that if people, um, gosh, I lost my train of thought. But where I'm saying about abuse is if you are exposed to, oh, here it is. Here's the thought. Anyways, Let's say that you're in a relationship with somebody and you're scared to leave. And you say, well, what if I get with somebody who's going to be just as violent or more than the guy that I had or the female that I had before? At least with this person, I know that when they get angry, they yell, they scream, they kick me, they hit me, they punch me. But what if I get with somebody and they don't hit me, kick me, punch me, and they torture me? And they give me the silent treatment and they give me the narcissistic abuse cycle that is totally different than anything I've ever experienced regarding an unhealthy relationship. So therefore, I won't be prepared how to defend myself for that. And I could be more of a victim than the guy that I'm with right now. Let me know if that makes sense. And I'm going to go on with the video because we were talking about abuse. So I wanted to correlate it on how this could be passed on in a situation such as this one with Danny Rowland. Days in 1990, Rowling went on a rampage where he murdered 5 University of Florida students in a spree that terrified the nation. But despite huge media coverage, Danny Rowland was never actually caught for the murders. It was only when he was arrested for an unrelated burglary charge that he confessed to some of the most horrific murders in Florida's history and was unmasked as the Gainesville Ripper. Then a few short years later, the Gainesville murders became even more infamous when they helped inspire the classic horror movie Scream. I've seen that movie, but I don't remember the premises of it. I mean, I remember it being kind of cheesy. This is the grisly true story of Danny Rowling, the Gainesville Ripper. Danny Rowland's upbringing before becoming the Gainesville Ripper. Danny Harold Rowling was born on May 26, 1954 to Claudia and James Rowling in Shreveport, Louisiana. Unfortunately for Danny, his father never wanted children. He was a cop and he constantly abused his wife and children. Danny was only 1 year old when his father abused him for the first time. He was beaten because he wasn't crawling properly. When Kevin, Danny's younger brother, was born in 1955, the abuse only worsened. Claudia tried to escape the toxic marriage, but time and again she returned. When Danny failed the 3rd grade for too many absences due to illness, his mother had a nervous breakdown. Danny's school counselor described him as suffering from an inferiority complex with aggressive tendencies and poor impulse control. Okay, this is usually defined these days as defiant disorder, because when I see juveniles come before me, a lot of them do suffer from the defiant disorder, meaning that they have an inferiority complex, which means that they don't respect authority. They have aggressive tendencies and they're impulsive. They don't think things through. They don't worry about the consequences. They just want to have the instantaneous gratification. So if you're a young Danny Rowling and you started getting abused at the age of 1 because you weren't crawling properly, a 1 year old's not going to really understand that abuse, but you're going to start understanding in your brain the trauma from it. Because anytime that you're fearful of your parents, it makes you not trust an intimacy or someone who truly loves and cares about you. Because the most basic people in your life, which is mom and dad, failed you as a young child. How are you ever going to develop that sense of attachment to these people that say, well, I love you, I care about you, when your mom didn't, your dad didn't, they beat you, they talked down to you, and this developed the inferiority, the aggressiveness, and the impulse control. Is this making sense? If you don't understand this right here, aggressive tendencies and poor impulse control, that is what they call a criminogenic trait, meaning that most criminals, they possess that. Those aggressive tendencies and poor impulse control would foreshadow Danny's murderous rage later on in his life. By age 11, Danny Rowland picked up music to cope with his abusive father. He played guitar and sang hymn-like songs. About this time, his mother was committed to a hospital after she had slit her wrist. Danny then picked up drugs and alcohol, which only worsened his already fragile mental state.
Okay, so we don't really know, other than what Nina was talking about last night on the live, we really don't know what kind of relationship he had. And I'm talking about Koberger right now. We don't know what kind of relationship he really had with his parents, other than what we've been told as far as him stealing the phone and his dad turning him in. We don't know whether he was a mama's boy. We don't know if he was really cool with his dad. We've heard so much stuff about he didn't really get along with his dad, blah blah blah, all these types of things in the past. But we really don't know what real relationship he had with his parents growing up. Was he closer to his siblings due to the fact that one was older and one was younger? Usually if you're the middle child, you're close to both of them. You know what I mean? Like the older one's kind of your role model, the younger one's kind of the fun one because they're still close to your age that you can have fun with them while the older one teaches you responsibility and hopefully some of the things that are going to guide you throughout your life. But we don't know what Koberger's relationship was with his parents. Was mom the disciplinarian? Was she the authoritarian? Was she the lack parent? Was she, absent? Was dad the authoritarian? Meaning that um he would no rule, I mean, don't play by any games, very strict disciplinarian. You know what I'm saying? Things like that. So we don't really know what type of parents he had, but we do know Danny's parents. So if Koberger had any kind of parents like that, you can kind of see the correlation happening. This individual started using drugs and alcohol. Guess what? Mr. Koberger was using heroin and everything else at a young age. We really don't know how young, but we've been given the information as young as probably 18, 17 years old. Hey, Justice. Hey, Texas. Welcome, sucker. How y'all doing this evening? I hope y'all are enjoying your evening.
So let's look at Koberger compared to Danny in the early ages based on the material that we have about his upbringing. And I will show some examples here in a little bit about the similarities of their upbringing. It was stated in an article that Koberger had lack of empathy towards anybody. He couldn't feel empathy. He obviously was doing heroin. We don't know if he was drinking. We don't know if he was doing other drugs. But think about this. Danny Rowland picked up drugs and alcohol, and this only worsened his already fragile mental state. How could Koberger's mental state be if he was able to clean himself up and then dive right on into the criminology part of his life? Because one thing about criminals is they're chameleons to the core. They can be just like everybody else if they emulate their behaviors on what they see. Like if they want to be normal, they're gonna pick out somebody that's normal and they're gonna perfect their mannerisms, their words, things of that nature, but it doesn't mean that their mental state's gonna be secure. And that's where the drugs and the alcohol and the fantasies of getting revenge and these type of things, that's where they grow. At age 14, Danny's neighbors caught him peeping into their daughter's room. Of course, his father beat him for doing that, but Danny tried to stay in control and he attended church and he struggled to hold down steady work. He then enlisted. So at 14, he was already peeping, which is another.
So before 12 gauge spits that out, I'm going to tell you. At 13, 14 years old, obviously you become very hypersexual. You become very curious, and you start to really take notice of the opposite sex. As I've explained in some of my videos, I even explained one with a live that I did with a walkthrough. And I showed you the old house where I used to do my malicious criminal act at 13. So, you know, at that age, you really don't know that you're committing a crime. I mean, he was peeping on his sister. Kohberger had two sisters. Is there any history that we're going to find out that he actually had any kind of illicit fantasies or any illicit behaviors that could have led him to peeping on his sisters and her friends while they were changing, during slumber parties or anything like this? I mean, because boys are boys. And you can tell me, well, you're out of line right there, 12 gauge. Nobody said anything about him ever doing that. But think about this a little bit. It's a natural tendency. If his sisters had girlfriends over and he was a quote unquote normal guy, they're either going to crush on him or he's going to crush on one of her friends. It's just a given. I don't know if any of you have younger siblings or older siblings of the opposite sex, but it happens. It's normal. It's normal. It happens. Does it mean that you're a perv? No. It means that you're curious about the opposite sex. And once you get that visualization, it's programmed in your mind that brings pleasure. The pleasure, then every time that you think about this situation, it intensifies your desire to want to get some of this pleasure. At that age, you really don't know that that's what's going on. But if you look into the psychological aspect of it, there's one or two things that happen. You either view this as a guilty kind of thing. People are telling you, you're just a young little pervert, or you shouldn't be doing that, or you should, whatever, which you shouldn't, okay? I'm not excusing it because you got to explain things for some people. I'm not excusing it, but it is part of human nature. Girls do it too. We're not just picking on the guys. Girls do it too. In the locker rooms, you're peeping on your friends. You're like comparing yourself to them. You're not being a pervert. You're just curious. So Danny was already being programmed with a lot of aggressiveness, impulsiveness, and deviant behavior. So therefore, his peeping on his sister could have very well been something totally different than just curiosity. Does that make any sense at all?
Criminogenic behavior, voyeurism at 14. The Navy wouldn't take him, so he joined the Air Force, but the military provided him no comfort. He eventually quit the Air Force after too much drug use, which included taking acid more than 100 times. Following his discharge from the military, Danny managed to marry and begin what appeared to be a normal life. If we remember some of the earlier things that were stated about Kohberger is he wanted to be a policeman. So he was doing the physical agility, all those things that was going to eventually catapult him into being a police officer. But do you think he was using drugs at that point? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not, because he was physically fit and he was losing weight, he was boxing, he was running, he was doing all these things. Then the cycle of abuse continued. At age 23, after being with his wife for 4 years, she separated from him after he threatened to kill her. This was in 1977. Danny turned his devastation into anger and raped a woman who closely resembled his ex-wife. Later that year, he killed a woman in a car accident, which troubled him further.
So later on,
So he turned his devastation into
kills
anger.
a lady in a car accident, which troubled him. So he still had remorse at this point. But this says this was in 1977. Danny turned his devastation into anger when he separated and divorced his wife after threatening to kill her, into anger and raped a woman who closely resembled his ex-wife. So last night we were talking about ego, id, and superego. So we're also talking about how reenactments provide us an outlet to continue to do what we've always done and to react to people who remind us of certain people in our past life or current life, and we react to them the same way. Have you ever had an ex-girlfriend, an ex-boyfriend who you just adored and somehow or another it just didn't work out? You see somebody from afar and you're like, your heart just kind of skips a beat and you're like, oh shit, there's so and so. And then when you get closer, you realize it's not that person at all. That's what, in a warped person's mind who has that anger and that aggressiveness, they're going to turn their violence that they know and have grown up believing in outward toward these victims. So to say that this person didn't resemble this other person that hurt him or was able to shun them or whatever, people remember pain. I can ask you right now, those people in chat, I can ask you, do you remember the first time you fell off your bike and you seriously hurt yourself? Do you remember the first time that you broke a bone? Do you remember the first time that you were disappointed? The first time that you actually could not stop crying because something hurt you? If you can put the memory to that, then that tells you how strong pain is. So to say that these people who were programmed in this avenue were able to just say, well, you know what, I'm older, so all that bullshit that happened to me when I was younger, it doesn't matter. That's kind of being very, very closed-minded to the fact that you can turn your emotions off that quickly and not reenact that moment, because pain is pain. What do y'all think about that? At school, you'd get a quarter for a kiss. What's up? I see you pimping. I see you pimping. Oh boy, Texas. Anybody want to give Texas a quarter?
And raped a woman who closely resembled his ex-wife. The rise of the Gainesville Ripper. Danny Rowland's Florida victims: Tracy Inez Pauls, Sonia Larson, Manuel Taboda, Krista Hoyt, and Christina Powell. And you notice they all have that brunette look. They have the brown eyes. I believe the guy with just collateral damage, but still, nonetheless, he was killed. So look at this: 2 women, a guy, and another woman. Same outcome as what the IDAHO4 was. He managed to kill 5, where supposedly KOHBERGER did 4. At 6'2", Danny Rowling was a massive, powerful man. From the late 1970s to 1990s, Rowling committed a series of petty crimes and thefts. He turned to a series of armed robberies to get cash and subsequently was in and out of the criminal justice system in Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, and Alabama. A lot of people say that Koberger is about 6'1" to 6'3", and he was an avid runner, took up boxing, so I'm sure he was no weakling either, you know. Um, he did steal his sister's iPhone, which he was later arrested for. He pawned it for drugs. So, it's not identical. I'm not trying to say these two guys are identical. I'm just pointing out the same.
Let me point out something to you guys and gals. The fact that he stole his sister's iPhone, many people say, well, that's not a big deal. Siblings steal from each other. But if you're looking a little deeper, that shows that he was comfortable enough to invade somebody who he viewed close to him and hurt them. Did he hurt her physically? No. Emotionally, he hurt her, I'm sure, by stealing her cell phone. I'm sure she was pissed. His dad. He hurt his dad because what kind of dad wants to raise a kid who's stealing from their own family? You tell me that. So to be able to be comfortable enough to hurt people who are the closest to you, how could you not hurt somebody who wasn't close to you? That is almost like a no-brainer. And you say, oh, you're just trying to point the finger at him and make him guilty. No, I'm not. I'm pointing out psychological situations that make the most sense based on people's patterns and living towards their families, toward the environment, towards other people. So he stole this phone. His father turned him in. See, what his dad did was what most people who love their kids do. Regardless of the consequence, they're going to do the right thing. They're not going to enable them. But could Koberger have seen that as a line in the sand type thing? Well, Dad's not in my favor now. He'll turn me in for anything. He'll turn me in for this. He'll turn me in for anything. I can't trust him. I can't trust my sister not to go tell Dad that I took from her. So that starts a dynamic in itself. And I know that people do not think that deep when it comes to this case. I'm just putting something out there that is a little different than most people talk about on their panels. And I've always done that because I believe in digging just a little deeper, not just to dig a rabbit hole, but to dig to the extent that, you know, if you're going to steal from a family member, that means that you're comfortable enough to hurt them. And you don't care, no matter how old you are. That's why at a young age, fathers tell their sons, do not hit your sister. Do not pull her hair. Do not do this, that, and the other, because they're teaching them that this person is to be loved, not treated like everybody else. They're teaching them how to respect the family dynamic. The fact that he did and how easily his dad was able to turn him in should tell you that there was not a lot of respect left for this individual at this point. And I'm not in no way denouncing his change of heart, his change of path. But what I'm trying to tell you is it's been my experience as a therapist. You do it once, there's a propensity to do it again later on in life if all the things add up to take you back to that reenactment that I'm talking about. If you don't believe this, go read you some psych books. Go read you some editorials about it because there's plenty of studies about this. So it's not something that I'm creating or making up at this point.
so that you can, call me crazy, call me delusional, call me whatever you want, but you can't debate the factual stuff about certain behaviors toward certain things equal a pattern of either maladaptive functioning or adaptive functioning, meaning that you're either going against what the norms are, or you're abiding by the norms. So the societal norms are, we don't we don't hurt people, we don't steal from people, we don't break the law, we we act right in church. We don't steal from the grocery stores. All these things are societal norms. Going against these societal norms means that you do everything against what society views as a norm. Meaning that you're going to go in and steal because you think you're entitled, because you are who you are, regardless. Hey, I paid for this by giving blood, or I've done this, or I've done that. So I'm entitled to have this. Or you know what? You should love me because I am who I am. And the fact that you can't love me, well, you know what? I'm going to show you how close I can hurt you and how close I can get to you. And there's nothing that you can do about it. The mind of a killer.
Similarities, okay? He broke out of prison several times and was fired and quit jobs just as frequently. Meanwhile, the bodies of 3 victims were found in Shreveport. 24-year-old Julie Grissom, her father Tom Grissom, and her nephew, 8-year-old Sean, who were all killed around this time Danny lost his last job and returned home in vengeance. So it sounds like Danny gets some kind of shunning type behavior, some kind of failure-esque mentality, and he takes it out on other people by killing them. Danny Rowland broke in May of 1990. He shot his 50-year-old father twice and nearly killed him. Though he survived, James Rowling had lost an eye and an ear. So he broke in the May of 1990, almost killed his father. Danny then changed his identity with papers he stole after breaking into someone's house. He fled Shreveport and took a bus to Sarasota, Florida, to start a new life as Michael Kennedy Jr. in late July of 1990. But running away to Florida didn't cure Danny and made him worse. Of course, wherever you go, there you are, and you bring all your baggage with you.
Great thought, 12 gauge. Wherever you go, there you are, and you bring all your baggage with you. As the public, we have not been given all the information about KOHBERGER's time in Pennsylvania. We have very limited police arrest other than the cell phone. We have no information about suspicion, or was he ever a suspect on anything? Did he ever get caught going against the societal norms? Or was he flying under the radar? Was he not causing any waves? Because you cannot look at this case one dimensional. There has to be very different areas that make sense to the pieces that add up. If you want to make him innocent, you're going to stick to the status quo. Everything that you've heard, everything that you've read, that's what it is. If you want to make him guilty, you're going to stick to what you've heard. Everything heard, everything read, that's what it is. But if you really want to learn about this case and learn about other cases for future reference, you will understand that there are very methodical things that must be done when you're investigating and you're actually looking into things. You don't just scratch the surface and say, well, that's all there is. There's so many people focusing on the PCA, on the IgG, on all this stuff that you don't really know whether it's going to be suppressed or whether it's not. And whatever your thought is, that's your thought. I respect that, you know? But when it comes to true crime, as I've always thought, you should dig a little deeper, dig a little deeper. You know what I mean? It's like focus on the person who's committing this crime. Like if you're looking at Danny Rowling right here, you're going to be thinking, oh my God, this guy escalated from 1 years old getting beat to running over somebody to raping an individual after his wife left him, and it just kept going on and on and on. The escalation continued on, and that is what makes it so interesting to me as a criminal justice major. Why I enjoy it, because I enjoy piecing the pieces of the puzzle together. I don't enjoy all the speculation and all the what could have, did this happen, did this happen, who could have done it. All that stuff doesn't enamor me. I enjoy the pieces that I talk about on my channel. You know what I mean? Welcome, Jack. Welcome, Nina. Great show. Great show. I wish I could have been up there with you, supporting you on that panel. Tanel, thank you for being here. It's very different whenever you're looking at something through the eyes of somebody who has suffered trauma, who has suffered, watch people get killed, watch people get beat down day in, day out. It's different when you're watching the world through these eyes, even though they're not around you right now. If I was to watch somebody physically striking a woman, it would take me back to a little child for a second. But then I'd snap out of it, and then I'd jump up to go protect that woman, or at least push them apart. But for a split second, I can tell you, it would take me back to that powerless little 5-year-old kid that was watching that happen before his eyes. And if you've ever experienced any of that stuff, you know what I'm talking about. You just don't react so quickly to do the next right thing. There's a split second freezing of your mental status taking you back to say, okay, I'm not 5 years old. I'm this age and I'm strong enough to go whoop this person's ass or at least separate them to protect that woman from getting hurt or that man from getting hurt, vice versa, whichever. August 24th, 1990, Danny broke into the home of Sonia Larson and Christina Powell, both incoming freshmen at the University of Florida in Gainesville. Rowley followed them home, broke into their house, and simply overpowered them. Thus began the streak of the Gainesville Ripper. He doesn't look like a powerful man. Right there, he looks like a beaten down man, like he had the world on his shoulders. Yeah, he does. Rowling covered both of the young women's mouths with duct tape before he bound their hands. He forced one young woman to perform oral sex on him before he raped, stabbed, and killed her. He returned to Sonia's dead body and raped her again. Rowling went as far as to cut off the girl's nipples and to keep one as a grisly trophy of his actions. The next day, Rowling killed Krista Hoyt in much the same fashion. He broke into her residence. After he raped her, he removed her nipples and placed them beside her. Rowling cut off her head and sat her upright on the edge of her bed. The Gainesville Ripper put her head on a bookshelf. So, I know this is disturbing, and it's very graphic, but this is what real crime is all about. It's not about the imaginary, picturesque scene that we think in our head. Is very bloody and very gory. One thing about Danny Rowling that I'm sure is going to talk about, he positioned the women he murdered, he would pose them. And recently, probably about a month ago, if that, it was stated that Kaylee was against the wall and slumped over. That is how she died. Where before we were told she had fallen and landed on Maddie. So was she positioned? Did the perpetrator position her body to pose her? Was Ethan and Dana posed? Were they taken from whatever position they landed and posed in a way where it would be even more horrific when you found them?
I want y'all to know that this is 9 months ago. It's not recent. It's not something that I made yesterday. So some of the stuff that I'm talking about was from 9 months ago or beyond. So it was theorized very early that these bodies were positioned or they could have been moved, to be found a certain way. So that's why I'm talking the way I'm talking because it was 9 months ago and beyond. So don't think that this is recent. It's a reboot. But I wanted to show this video because not only were we talking about it last night on the panel, I heard other creators talking about this tonight, and I thought to myself, you know what? I got a video on that. Let me just put in some education stuff out there, and let's see if they really do have some similarities. Because he's being compared to Bundy, and I mean, I just don't get people's arguments. I really don't. I mean, if it makes sense, make it make sense. But how can you say that the man had no kind of real evidence, but yet are willing to compare him to a man who escaped from prison, moved in multiple states, killed multiple women, and I mean, I just don't get how you can compare Brian to Bundy. I don't see the similarity. I mean, I see, if you look into it deep enough, you can make an apple look like an orange in your mind. You really can, you know. But um I really don't see how they can compare these two. You know what I'm saying? And that's my opinion. That's just my opinion. But I respect everybody's opinion in chat. I'm glad that you guys are able to express your thoughts freely because we do agree to disagree in here. And doesn't mean that you're wrong, doesn't mean that we're right, doesn't mean that, the other way around. But it just there's some very fascinating things about these cases. If you're looking for the MO, that was obviously the Gainesville Ripper's MO. To chop off the nipples and put them next to the person and position them. You get what I'm saying? So if there was some kind of MO that the police found at 1122 that gave them the inkling that this was a method of operandi about the potential perpetrator, then this is how they put the investigative process into eventually finding the individual. I mean, but if there wasn't, and you don't have to prove motive. That's the thing. You don't have to prove it. But what I'm talking about motive, I'm talking about it, being their calling card. Did they take anything from the resident? Was there anything scattered around that would give an inkling of the killer's identity? Very early on, and people haven't talked about this lately, but I remember very early on how they were speculating that the knife sheath could have been a red herring. It could have been the calling card of the killer to taunt the police to say, well, I'm going to leave this, but you'll never catch me because there's not any DNA, there's not any blood, there's not any of this stuff. You're not going to catch me. And that was from the very beginning. That was from the very beginning. So there was a lot of thought pattern behind, well, was this his calling card? Was this the beginning of, you know, his murderous ways if he had not gotten caught? Would there have been more murders if this is the guy? You get what I'm saying? Hey, Tom Van, thank you for being here, buddy. Long time. I believe BTK was the most well rounded serial killer, him and Zodiac.
Zodiac never got caught, right? You know? And I heard last night something in a chat that I'm gonna share with y'all tonight. If y'all didn't watch our last two lives from last night, um, I think it was noted that Ted Bundy's mom was really his sister. That blew my mind. I don't know how that goes. I mean, I'll have to deep dive into that. But if any of y'all know the Bundy story and know how that took place, please share in the chat because I cannot. I cannot. I can't really. I cannot. Get back to the video, 12. All right. Yes, yeah, let's do this.
I'm sure we'll know at the trial. By now, news of the murders had spread across the university. Authorities put out as much information as they could to try to catch the suspect, and the students slept in groups and took every precaution they could think of. Despite this, the Gainesville Ripper killed one more time. On August 27, Rowling attacked Tracy Pools and Manuel Taboda, both 23. He killed Taboda while he slept. Then he killed Tracy. Authorities feel Rowling did not manage to mutilate these bodies because he may have been in danger of getting caught or was otherwise interrupted. These murders all occurred less than 2 miles from each other around the University of Florida. The university consequently canceled classes for a week. Students brought baseball bats with them everywhere they went, and no one went out alone. During the day or the night, students triple locked their doors and some slept in shifts so someone was awake at all times. By the end of August, thousands of students left campus and around 700 never came back because they feared for their lives. I don't blame them. Danny Rowland's father, who was a 20-year-old veteran cop of Shreveport Police Department, had not only taught his son how to take abuse all of his life, but he also taught Danny how to cover his tracks. Police couldn't find enough evidence at crime scene to implicate Danny Rowland. Instead of leaving the duct tape on the dead body, Danny disposed of it downstairs to get rid of any fingerprints. Danny also used cleaning.
See, you guys are talking about a potential use of a gun in another crime. I don't think anybody's ever given it much. I mean, they've talked about it. They've talked about stun guns. They've talked about, another potential weapon. They've talked about two knives. But think about this. We've never really been president to know whether there was a gun used as a secondary weapon in this case. At one point I believe that there was two knives used because I thought as a killer, why would I go in with just one knife? If I dropped it, if I broke it, if if somebody knocked the knife out of my hand, then I have another one in the other hand to be using to do what I'm doing. But I believe Tom and I had discussed the gun theory, and I think that we had agreed that that could be a potential reason why he would have been able to subdue one while stabbing the other because nobody wants to go against the gun. You already know that you're going to be losing in that battle. So, I don't know how y'all feel about that, but it's a very good possibility. I mean, it's a very good possibility.
Solvents on the dead body to remove traces of semen. Some of the female bodies were left in sexually suggestive positions, which offered authority to clue into the killer's method. And there's the names. The Gainesville Ripper continued to steal from homes and gas stations until he was finally caught in Ocala after a high-speed chase. He was wanted for the robbery of a Winn-Dixie, as authorities still did not know that he was the Gainesville Ripper. That was on September 8th, 2 weeks after the murders. The triple murder in Shreveport of Julie Grissom, her father and nephew, clued the Gainesville police into their suspect. Grissom's corpse was left in a sexual position. She was also stabbed to death.
It wasn't until January 1991, more than 4 months after the murders, that police caught a break. Because of the similarities of the murders in Shreveport and Gainesville, Florida investigators saw DNA of prisoners from Shreveport who were incarcerated. Danny.
I mean, many people don't want to bend on this fact right here as far as the Koberger case. They said the police said it was a targeted attack. The mayor said that from jump. It was a crime of passion. Where do you think these people jump to this conclusion? Do you think that they just walked in and said, oh, it's a crime of passion? 4 people were stabbed, 2 were left alive. Oh, it was a targeted attack because the 4 that got murdered were the targets. They had to find something in that home that gave them the inkling that this house or these people were the target. There was something that led them to that thought process. And there was something that led them to even think that it was a crime of passion. I believe that early on they may have thought it might have been a murder suicide. I could be wrong, but when you're walking into something like that, you see a guy and a girl deceased, and you've yet to find the other 2 bodies. Wouldn't it look like a crime of passion before you find the other 2 and then the other 2 are murdered? Then you're like, okay, how did this add up? 4 dead bodies, 1's a male. Could this been a targeted attack? How was it a targeted attack? Who was the target? What was the target? And how do we put that piece together and saying that to the public? What does that target mean? Well, many people have picked up the pieces and said it meant a drug connection. Many people have picked up the pieces and said it means that there was people that were targeting that house because they had drugs or money or whatever. Drugs were flushed down the toilet. All this stuff. Targeted, if you really look at something that's targeted, I can target something and never hit it. You get what I'm saying? I could target a house across the street for one day. If they mess with me, I'm gonna take them out. But to target a house because there were drugs there, or there was guns there, or with a cartel hit or whatever, that is just very far-reaching in my mind. And you could think I'm a moron for thinking that, or you can think that I'm one-dimensional in thinking that. But when you look at a targeted attack, to me, that's very specific. It means that you target certain areas to take out for a reason. Like if I target you and I take out self-defense course and I target you in order so that you don't hurt me, I've been taught to take out certain things so that you're less effective in getting to me and hurting me. So targeted could have meant take out the 3rd floor, then take out the 2nd floor. Just never had a chance to finish the job. I could be wrong. But that's how I look at target. If you're going to hurt me, I'm going to target you. I'm going to put targets on your body so that I can annihilate those areas to keep you from getting to what your desired result is. And I don't know if that makes sense to you, or you believe that I'm just up here just flapping my gums.
Rolling DNA was similar enough to the DNA left at the Gainesville murder scene to charge him with murder. Rowling confessed to being the Gainesville Ripper. Prosecutors found enough evidence to convict him, and he was subsequently executed on October 25th, 2006 in Florida. A total of 47 people witnessed the execution of the Gainesville Ripper, which is double the capacity of the viewing room. Rolling glass meal consisted of a lobster tail served with drawn butter, butterfly shrimp with cocktail sauce, a baked potato with sour cream and butter, strawberry cheesecake, and sweet tea. All right, so
I'm rolling. That kind of goes, you know, Daniel Rowling was a very violent man, as all these serial killers or killers that you've seen are. But like I was talking about last night, if you're going to be a certain person to be able to commit a certain crime, there has to be a certain mentality for that person. There's a link for anybody that wants to hop up in the chat and talk to me. Tom, will there be you? Will there be you, Nina? Anybody? We're gonna talk a little bit more, and then I'm gonna call it a night. But the propensity for violence starts at a very young age. It doesn't start at an area where you're already mindful of your surroundings in that aspect. Hey, Nina, good show a while ago.
Well, thank you, boy. I tell you what, I didn't think I was going to be able to jump in there.
I know I was like, man, I want to be up there, be right side by side, arm in arm with Dina. I want to go and I want to have her back, you know?
Well, everybody was like, "Jump in there, Nina," and I was like, "There's not a stopping point. You don't want to just come off rude."
Did that girl in the middle ever say a word during the whole live?
Yeah, she finally about, I guess, about the last hour she started talking.
Good Lord. I was like,
But
is she even a person? Is she a mannequin? What?
yeah, she finally jumped in there, and I mean, I think it went really well because I was sort of apprehensive at first, being the only one up there with a different point of view. But I mean, everybody was really respectful, and you know,
Of
so
course. Of
it went
course.
really good. But too, it also comes on. I think it has a lot to do with the person coming in with the different point of view. If you come in like a wrecking ball, I mean,
Yeah, it probably would have been not a good idea if I was on panel. Then I would have needed the warning label from you. I would have said warning label 12 gauge. Hey,
but
AR.
I mean, there was a lot of things that like they were talking about the IGG getting thrown out and stuff like that. And, when I explained, that right now the only three states that have laws concerning the IGG is Maryland, Montana, and Utah. I mean, you can't have fruit of the poisonous tree if there's no laws.
Right. You know, you're very mindful of all this stuff, Nina. You've been studying behind the scenes.
Oh my gosh, Gage, you just don't know. I mean, that there is so, I mean, oh
You ought
my
to just go
gosh.
get a criminal justice degree. I mean, you'd be able to just, kind of fly through it with the knowledge that you're dispelling at this point. Yeah.
I mean, I went to send you the stuff for like our next show with the ego depletion and everything, and I'm like, oh
Yeah,
my
I got
god,
it.
he will kill me if I send him that stuff
Yeah, I got it. I
because
got
that,
some of
yeah, but what I sent you was only like a smidget of it.
yeah.
And what's so sad is I read all of it.
AR, I'm sorry about your surgery, buddy. I hope that you get to feeling better. I did see you and Nina or in somebody's chat talking about it. I guess it was Dago's maybe. I saw that you had surgery. I hope you get to feeling better, bro. That can be probably not a good feeling at all, you know? I want to show the slide that you sent me, Nina, because I thought they were hella interesting. I'm gonna
Well,
start with
yeah,
this one.
okay.
Let's start with and this kind of goes with what we were just talking about. So very quickly before I show this slide, what do you think about the listening about Danny Rowland
Do you believe that there was any similarities between him and Koberger?
I think that Koberger was, I don't think he was trying to be like anybody. I think he was trying to be better than everybody.
That's what I told somebody earlier. I said, told my girlfriend actually, I said, I believe he's arrogant enough to not want to copy anybody, but to be the one that, you know, goes
Right.
down in
And
history like,
I mean, it's like I said last night, it's a win-win for him. If he gets caught, he's got his death drive. And then, if he doesn't get caught, then he's better than Bundy.
yeah, this one caught my eye.
Oh, now, did I send you 4 of those?
I think so.
Yeah,
This one, the first one, is a psychotic psyche. Sex, food, drink, drugs now. That is your id or your ID. Who turned out the light? That is your ego, and your super ego is saying the same thing. So your id is telling you that you want these things, and these other things are kind of throwing a temper tantrum. Healthy psyche. Okay. Okay, guys, I'm in charge. Anything you want has to go through me. Okay. So there's the balance, right?
right.
Yeah. And then we get to, where's the other one? Freud's structure of the human psyche. There's the id with the instinct, the ego with the reality, and the superego with the morality. And then there's the neurotic psyche, which is the superego saying, which is the morality. Listen up, I'm in charge, and you're not in here to enjoy yourselves. Get ready for a double-sized portion of anxiety with a supersized order of guilt. The ego is whimpering because the reality all of a sudden is not happy anymore, and the ID or the id is saying no fun.
And now they're
These
off
three
kilter.
things challenge themselves. Yeah, and we'll get to this other part whenever we do the show on this stuff. I just wanted to show those because I mean, honestly, that's a lot, and I really don't want to be 3 hours.
Right.
I've
No,
talked a
oh
lot
no,
this
believe
week.
me. I mean, my Discord, I've got tabs set up, and actually one of them is the ego depletion, and it is slap full of all kinds of research and stuff like that. And I mean, I didn't do it lightly. I
You know
probably
what
went a
else,
little
Nina?
overboard.
You know what else I was thinking, Nina, that hasn't really been spoken on? You know how people talk about being in the ego depletion. Something got me thinking last night when we were talking about Jen Soto and how she's bipolar, right?
Right.
There's people that have killed in a mania state as well. So
Oh
it's not
yeah, Manny.
always, yes, it's not always being low,
Right.
it's being too high. You get what
Right.
I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, being in that manic state, there's
And I mean,
no boundary.
I think that's one of the things that I found with Freud is as crazy as he was he was so ahead of his time.
Yeah.
For the years that he was doing it and everything for the time that, because I mean, we're talking what, early 1900s? I mean, and so he was definitely ahead of his time, but he was, the balance is everything.
And all the philosophers, all the great ones, they all pretty much align with the same theory. They just tweak it a little bit to make it their own.
Right. And now one of the things that I thought about last night, and actually Marty actually helped me do the research on this, on the inside looking post, he actually puts in there that the heel of the shoe has an S on it.
Hey, Tom Van.
Hey guys,
How you doing?
tired. A lot of work.
Oh yeah.
you have too many streaming stuff to catch up. 12 gauge.
I'm sorry to hear that, bro. I'm sorry to hear that.
No, it's okay.
So thank you for coming up here with us. What's your thoughts on the Danny Rowland?
You know, that stuff just sickens me. When I got out of the Marines, and then the LA police wanted to recruit Marines, ex-Marines, of course, and I just told my Clint, I said, I just take them out to the field and double tap and just be done with it. Something like that guy, torturing. I just think of the people and stuff like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I understand no murder's good, but I just don't that kind of torture, butchery, and stuff. I just can't even fathom it. That's worse than war.
I mean, he started at an early age as far as the dysfunctional programming. As we're talking about right now, about the how those three interpersonal relationships within himself were being programmed at a very dysfunctional level, where by the time he became a young man, he was already having relationship issues. And due to that failing, the feeling of abandonment, I would say, he raped a woman.
He,
It all starts like that.
he's really sloppy though. 12 gauge. That's sadistic. Whereas, like, say, if Brian is in fact the person that did this, he's smart. Smart people don't tend to be that sadistic. They can be, but they think things out. They can plan better. I think people that are not as smart, their intellect only goes so far, then they resort to violence. Now, I'm not a
Okay.
psychologist. It's just my theory on stuff like that. But I just think the smarter they are, the more cunning they are, and better planning, just better planning. And I
Okay.
think if Brian was that person, I think he's a planner. He took classes on BTK. He maybe Bundy also. BTK never would have got caught, but he had this propensity to want to talk to the police all the time. And then finally he sent a letter from the church printer, and all printers have they can find out who that printer owns. And
Right.
that's what did him in. Same with the Zodiac. I was watching the Netflix series, the 3-part one on the Zodiac, and he always had to play games, stuff like that.
And do you believe that, this is for you or Nina? Do you believe that, the sheath could have been intentionally left as a way to ploy with the police at first, not
Absolutely.
realizing that there could have been DNA on it?
I can see both ways, Nina. Either or. That's hard to say for me.
Right. I mean, it just throwing that out there. What do you
Well,
think, Nina?
Well, I mean, I think so because, I mean, I'll go right back to it. It's a win-win for him. If he leaves the sheath to toy with them, thinking there's no DNA and he's done the perfect wipe off, I mean, but then they're stumped because they've got the sheath, but no way to put it towards somebody. So he's smarter than them.
I thought of something else, Nina. Maybe he left the sheath to throw him off of thinking it was a K-bar, knife, but he actually used something different.
I have actually really, I've wondered if the sheath belonged to the girls. Because the way I can see it happening is Maddie's getting attacked. Kaylee's in the corner. She grabs underneath Maddie's pillow, grabs the K bar off, out from under there, and just slings the sheath off, trying to protect herself.
Okay, I would add something here though. Would you think Maddie be the type of person that could use a K-bar?
I think that she would put it under her pillow to make herself feel safe.
Okay.
Do you
That
think
false,
that,
maybe the falsehood of the safetiness of it.
but also, what would the safety factor be? What would she have that K bar under her pillow for? Who were they feeling threatened by?
Look, I just said I wondered about the theory. I didn't say I had it all put together.
I'm just asking questions
I
because
didn't get that far.
other
I was
people
worried
have
about
the
ego
same.
depletion gauge.
Hold on, I gotta turn this heater off. You guys carry on.
But no, I mean, seriously though, I think it belongs to the perpetrator. I had just wondered about, because in a lot of the videos, the girls have machetes and K-bars and all kinds of stuff.
Of course, of course.
I wonder if
What were
it's
you gonna
theirs
say?
though. I wonder if it's theirs though, or they're just using some of the guys' stuff for those videos. I just
Well,
don't.
not to talk about rumors, but the rumor is the rumor is that Showalter gave it to Maddie.
At the grub truck?
Yeah.
But for what?
See, that's the rumor. You got to have the rumor to go
But
along
you
with the.
have
What did
to.
you tell Adam?
But the next part would be the deciding factor. Like, if there was no stalking, there would be no need for fear, and there would be no need for fear to have a weapon in your home,
Right.
to leave your doors unlocked, things like that. At least that's how I think. What do you think, Tom?
Well, I'm conflicted somewhat 12 gauge on it because now for me, I just cannot see of all my female friends, none of them would request a knife, to fight off. It's not that easy to use, and then it can be taken from you and used against you. But if I was going to give somebody, I'd buy them a 22 pistol or something, or a taser or something like that. Because you got to be really close to use a knife.
Right.
But
Well,
possible.
Tonka, I want to answer this question by or this statement by Tonka, and I've seen those pictures as well, and you're not wrong for saying that. There are a lot of pictures on the internet with them posing with knives. You're right, but you got to ask yourself, were they knife fanatic? I mean, because posing with a knife and using a knife are two totally different things. And this knife that supposedly committed this crime was just not any regular
That
knife.
ain't no joke.
It was a knife used for a specific thing. It was not a Ginsu knife. It was not, any of those things. I said Ginsu, like just
That's
showing my age right there.
It's a
But
combat knife.
yeah, it was a combat knife. So it was used for one purpose and one purpose only.
Survival.
Well, I use mine to crack walnuts with the handle, 12
See?
gauge.
So that would say that, I mean, I saw the one that you're talking about where she's holding that big machete looking knife and there's a watermelon, I think. Is that right, Nina? Where
Yeah.
somebody's holding a
Yeah.
watermelon?
Yeah.
Or what did they say that was photoshopped?
But I think I think too that they did a lot of that for sex appeal too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I agree with you, Tonka. I really do. That it doesn't mean that someone isn't having that available to use it. I'm just wondering in my mind, not trying to convince you or go against you in any way because that's not what we do here. I'm just saying that in my mind, when I'm thinking a knife like this, what would it serve under a pillow? What would it serve in the bed? What would it? I mean, Kaylee's dad taught her how to shoot a gun. I would believe that if they had any weapon, either one of them, there would have been a small pistol or something, just like Tom just said. What do y'all think?
I think you have debunked my theory.
I didn't say anything.
Well, the police 12 gauge say the best home defense is a 12 gauge shotgun, one with an 18-inch barrel,
Yeah.
because then you can
I
just.
think the best home defense is to put a big pair of size 12 or 13 men's work boots out in front of the door
Okay. I
on
can
the
dig
front porch.
that. I could dig that. I mean, anything's possible. Anything's possible, and that's what makes this case so interesting. Is that you know I don't like to argue about it. You know what I mean? Like my mind is totally different in thought process than a lot of people's, and I guess that's why my thoughts and feelings on certain things are not that popular because I go instantly to my training, to my current studies, things like that, and it doesn't compute in my brain, so it's hard to really take on some of these theories because they don't add up to the end result in my mind. It might to other people, and that's great, but in my mind, it doesn't, and that doesn't make them any less of a person. It just means that in my mind, it doesn't get there. And for whatever reason, you know what I'm saying?
Well, one of the things that I've always said is, it's the salaciousness that people go after. If I
Yeah.
tell you that I stumped my big toe, so what? Big deal. But boy, if I had all kind of, hey, guess what I was doing when I stumped my big toe? Then you start getting a response. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
you got to make it more provocative than what it could be.
Yeah.
My theory of one perp and ego depletion is very boring.
It's a crime planned or is it a crime of opportunity?
I
Good
think it was
question. What
planned,
do you think,
definitely.
Tom?
Planned, definitely.
Okay. So you
Crime of
believe it's premeditated?
Well, yeah, I think a crime of opportunity, it wouldn't have been as slick as it was. There's too much things if you don't plan for it, you have a lot
That
of
that
things that,
step would have got him.
yeah, they would have been really sloppy, sloppy. I mean, any knife fight is going to produce a lot of blood, so it looks horrible, but he would have been, there's so much he wouldn't have known, I would think.
Tom, I have a question. Would the mattress have absorbed a lot of the blood?
I think so. What's curious to me, though, when I looked at it, um, when they had the mattress out, that one mattress looked like it was from Xana's bedroom because there's only one side had blood on it, basically.
Right.
And if it was Kaylee was in Maddie's room, that thing would be soaked. I could see a lot of it soaking up. It depends. Did he hit arteries and it was shooting all over? Did they have the comforter on top of him?
Well,
There's
now I do know in Maddie's room where her desk was, they cut that whole portion of the wall out.
Yeah, see, there's some. This is a case as a gag order is so frustrating. I mean, I'm not really a true crime person per se. I studied the Kennedy assassination once they released all the stuff. And
Right.
that was super fascinating to me because how they did it. And there's still so many questions yet. But same with this one. And I think that's what spawns all the conspiracy theories, you know. And then to me, unfortunately, people are making theories that their footer is theories, and that I want to see solid evidence. And I talked about this once before with you, 12 gauge.
Yes.
Nobody ever stops to think. Everybody thinks Brian was framed, okay, about this. But has anybody really picked that apart and step by step and say, like, okay, how would we do this? It's 12 o'clock. Please get this. Do they have a patsy file? Do they have things on file? Who brings it in? And et cetera, et cetera. I learned my process of thinking. I went to Harvard for 4 years, then 2 years at MIT for computer science and artificial intelligence neural networking. And that process was so good because you have to think out everything, and then you have to go,
Hmm.
and then you got to check your work by back propagation. So that got me to thinking. The theories are so out there now. I would just like to see more of a solving one thing in blocks. Is this really true? Like we did that one thing when Jeff and I and you were on. Like Jeff showed that picture of Xana, and then when she was young, and then we found out from Jeff that one of her last texts was, "Don't forget about the foundation in the bathtub." To me, that would preclude anybody else just picking up the phone and pretending to be Xana.
Oh, definitely.
And that shows a timeline tuning a connection. See, I like stuff like that. Was there enough light in the house? We noodled that one, and Crime Sleuthing did the same thing. She's one of the first people outside of me that thought they had enough lights in that living room to see.
Oh, yeah.
The
Yeah,
house,
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. I agree with you.
Yeah, the house looks goofy from the outside, but
Of
inside
course.
it looks pretty straightforward to me. And
Hmm.
that's a lot of light. So I think if you can build up all these, this happened for sure, this happened for sure, it puts more puzzle pieces in, and it kind of then limits the conspiracy theories.
Well, I mean, when you're talking about the lights and the fact that she saw, quote unquote, the bushy eyebrows, that living room was lit up pretty good.
Oh yeah, definitely,
You know,
definitely.
like you were saying in the last live, there was over 200 lights on that curtain
I could only
looking
count
thing.
200, but there was more back there.
Yeah.
And then
So,
they had a speaker there too that had a lot of lights on it. And then
yeah.
one,
So, I mean, if somebody's coming at you through that doorway and they step down, you're going to be able to, like right now, this light is illuminating me from the side. You can see my eyebrows,
But
right?
see, that's what a lot of people I think are missing is because everybody wants to say that Dylan came out of her room. I do not believe she came out of her room. I think she cracked her door just enough to peek her eyeball through, and he came around that corner in front of the good vibes so she could see him, but he couldn't see her.
Well, regardless if he saw her or not, he chose not to kill her.
Right.
He chose not to kill. He might have not even known Bethany was downstairs. I heard something earlier that made a lot of sense. Since he found Ethan in the room, who's to say there wasn't any more men in the house?
I
You
doubt
get what
it.
I'm saying? So if you fight one off, who's to say that the other two rooms don't have another man in there for you to have to fight off? And
Now, see,
you already lost your element of surprise if this one sees you in the doorway, right?
right. My thing about Ethan is, this is just my opinion, but I think that Ethan was pretty passed out, probably from drinking. And they say that what being passed out drunk is like one molecule difference between that and anesthesia. And I mean, I think he was passed out and he took advantage of that. And I think that's with the body fluid coming down the side of the wall.
Hmm.
And I mean, I think that his head was at the headboard asleep, and he did a quick cut that ran down to the floor and ran outside.
I mean, honestly, if you take everything outside the house and you just focus on the inside of the house, the crime, and because that's what the investigators are focused on, right? The secondary with them canvassing the area. So this is outside the house. I believe where it becomes so confusing for people is they have lost track of the inside of the house where the murder occurred. They're so focused on the outside and the car and the cameras and the IGG and all this other stuff. I believe that if you take all that out of the equation and you really focus on the criminal aspect of what went on in that home, and you really look deeper than the surface, as Tom's saying, you would be able to see this crime in a different light.
I
Do you
think it was
agree or disagree? I mean, you can disagree with me, but
I think it was much more simpler in my mind, 12 gauge. But I think that people, well, we see people all the time. They had to be screaming. They had to be this. There's no way you can tell me that. But
hmm.
they can be. You certainly can scream, but there's also when you don't. There's a lot of factors we just don't know about it. But and if he was going from one, if the girls were screaming upstairs, wouldn't have Xana called the police or done something? Everybody would have woke up. To me,
Right.
but then this stuff is happening fast, relatively fast. I think he was pretty sure that there was not going to be a lot of other guys in there because there's only actually 3 cars outside. Ethan didn't have the Jeep that night. He had Hunter had it. So he had Maddie, Kaylee's, and Xana's for the most part. And then
So
Ethan,
I'm going with the no stalking theory on this one. That's why I said what I said. So if he wasn't stalking them, he wouldn't have been for certain who was in that house. Yes or no?
well, the lights are out, except for something, and he knows that if he surveillance, not stalking, but surveillance, he would know that it's primarily females. with that. It's not a party. It's with nobody coming and going, and it's dark out that early morning. I think he was after somebody. He went up there maybe just to kill one person, not necessarily targeted, but just to kill one person. But then he found out things weren't what he thought. And that's the problem
Right.
with planning. Things can go sideways anytime. And then when he's coming down, I think he, for whatever reason, where he heard Sandwich, he saw her or something, and he wanted to deal with it. Because if he didn't deal with it, she was going to call the police. And he's in.
And the answer to the question in the chat, why did the perp have to be a male? They don't have to be, because statistically, 80% of murders that are perpetuated by women are done with a knife. And that is statistical. And I thought about that from the very beginning, and I got a lot of pushback because of that. But you have to ask yourself, what would be the logical reasoning for a female in that home? And I know where you're going with this, where a female in that home would be enraged enough to take out all the people. And would she be strong enough to take out Ethan by herself? I mean, because there has to be a level of strength and stamina and all this other stuff. And it had been reported that these two were under the influence of certain things. So, have you ever tried to fight somebody when you're drunk? You think you're 10 feet tall and bulletproof, but you can't swing accurate at all. I'm just giving you food for thought. I'm not saying your theory is wrong or anything like that, but I'm just saying that, 80% is the number of murders committed by women. They do use a knife.
I got a question though for you, 12 gauge, regarding that. How many of those are just defending themselves in the home or a fight got out of hand? And how many others are planned going to somebody else's house to specifically do that?
Good point.
We got to start breaking down stats more to get more granular to find out who can. I don't think there was.
I appreciate that. Good point.
Well, my reason for thinking it's a man is because it was a man's DNA that got a one-on-one match to the DNA on the sheath.
Yeah.
And I mean, I hate to be like that, but I mean, like I said last night, you've got 22,000 Elantras. Let's break that down. You've got how many are being driven after 2:30 in the morning by mail? How many are in that area being driven by a male with their phone off? How many now are being driven by a male in that area with their phone off during the times of the murder, and then the phone comes on after the murders?
I got a question for both of you, 12 gauge and Nina.
Okay.
I know Fry came out and said there's 22,000 white Elantras in the area. The whole town is only 25,000 people.
Oh, he had to be including Pullman too.
Okay, even in Pullman still. And the reason I asked is because, like I said on a previous one, you probably weren't here, Nina. I went through the town of Pullman on Google Maps. I know it's not scientific,
Right.
but I found 4 white Elantras going up and down the whole city. It took me about 4 hours.
See, I've wondered if it was supposed to be 2,200.
I think that would be much more. You would see, either in Pullman, you don't see that many white Elantras per se. I think he made a mistake, personally.
Very well could have been. PKC says she thinks the 22,000 was probably worldwide.
But Fry said in this area. Now, area is a subjective word.
Would it have been the state? I
Could have
mean, I
been
don't know. Northern Idaho?
I see, seriously, I think it's 2,200.
Yeah,
He probably made a mistake because there's just
I mean,
not that many people.
People are human. People are human. They make mistakes, typos, all sorts of things. I live in a town that 20,000 people, and if I'm speaking correctly, that's about the same population as Moscow, right? 22,000 or something.
Yeah, Moscow during the time of college, while college is in, is like 22 to 25.
Okay, so I've done this. I've tested this theory out just based on my curiosity. I've been out between, I've driven around and I've been looking for how many cars are out just driving around. How many are stopped at lights? How many different types of vehicles I see? How many types of vehicles I see? I've been very fanatical about this, y'all. I haven't spoke on this, but I've done this because I believe in field study as well. And I don't know how accurate that would be, but you know, my result didn't come out with a lot of cars being out between 2 and 5. There was a lot of police officers, but not a lot of vehicles just kind of driving around. The ones that you did see, they were very obvious that there was something going on with these people. They either had a busted out light, you know. You get what I'm saying? Because nobody really goes around during that time unless you're leaving from a bar, you're going out, you're heading home, you're hitting a lick somewhere, you're heading to the dope dealer's house, these type of things. So I was just curious to do that type of study. What do y'all think about that? You think it'd be pretty accurate? I mean, I'm not going to provide it on here, but for my own self gratification, I guess I was like, well, any of these cars, could they be committing a criminal act? Of course. I don't know if that made sense at all. I'm sorry.
Well, that's because you're in law enforcement there, type 12 gauge, so you're going to be thinking that more often than most people.
Yeah. What do you think, Nina?
I agree.
Well, I don't go around thinking, if I've seen a car go by saying, wonder if they just killed somebody.
Yeah.
Exactly. And another thing too is you hear people say maybe one of them could have been saved. If they'd have just called 911. Y'all, I swear, I read an article where it said where there was a surgeon, and his statement was that at that house there could have been a trauma team set up in that house with surgery ready, and that they couldn't have been saved.
No.
I heard that too.
But the medical examiner, Nina, said that they all had at least one fatal wound. And being, like I said, I've told 12 gauge, being in the Marines, I've seen people die and some that survived from knife fights. But
Right.
the ones that died, no, they're going to be stabbed in the heart, their throat's going to be slashed, or they're going to be gutted way open. They lasted about 4 or 5 minutes total. So you couldn't get emergency people that close fast.
Right. And that's the thing about it is, why put that kind of guilt on those girls?
Yeah, see, that's why I want to see. I'm kind of on the fence, but I lean towards it being him, and only because for me, I want to see here. I want to hear Dylan talk. We have this gap, and and everybody's crucifying her, and I just think, well, yeah, Dad would have done this. Even a 5-year-old knows how to call 911 and all that kind of type of thinking. I just got to hear her. I think once we hear her, and then things get put in, pieces will fall more together because it's going to be more of a preponderance of evidence type of case where they're just going to say, well, this could have happened, but all these things together in that night are not coincidental.
And you made a great point there because this isn't a checkoff list. This isn't going to be a checkoff list in court. It's not going to be like, well, he couldn't have been there because he's out driving YYY Park. Okay, so that checks him off not being able to be in the area. He couldn't have done this because it's this. Okay, check that off. Check that off. It isn't a statistical survey at the end where you reach, okay, you got more checks than not checked. So therefore, there can't make sense of even arresting this man. It's not like that. Evidence is evidence, right? Am I correct?
Yeah. Well, what's floating around so much now is they have nothing. And that started happening when Ann Taylor was questioning Corporal Payne about the south of Moscow. They had no white Elantra, and people were taking that to mean the whole city of Moscow, and it wasn't. And now, then the big thing I was checking channels was they have no evidence, free Brian, et cetera, et cetera. And that just means that, you got to double check and fact check this stuff.
Right.
Like for
Right. I mean, you just can't say, well, let's say that there was a killer by the name of Van Tom, and somebody saw your name. Oh, Tom Van, that's the guy. That's the guy everybody's looking for. And automatically you get all these people approaching you because they know that you're the killer. You have a history of being in the Marines, blah, 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 all this stuff. And they just put their own story together to make it make sense on how it added up to you being the killer rather than having evidence to prove that you were either the person or not the person. Evidence will be proved at the court of law or at the trial. The jurors are going to decide guilt or innocence.
So let me ask you a question, 12 gauge, and this is for you too, Dina. Now, a lot of things is Brian was framed. People are putting that up there, to get him. So explain to me, or what you're thinking about this. Nobody ever goes through a checklist on how exactly that happened. And that's huge. They just say he's framed, he's covered. But a call comes in at 12 o'clock, we have a homicide. Then how does that framing of Brian KOHBERGER happen? I can't see it. Unless
Well,
they,
as far as the framing, as far as MPD, okay, we can go with that. But what about those 50 officers in Pennsylvania? Some of those were corporals and majors. I can't see them saying, you know what, we're framing this guy. I'm giving up my corporal badge for that.
well, but the same thing happens okay, first of all, the knife sheath didn't go to Moscow police. It went back to the Meridian lab,
Right.
forensic lab. So this framing had to take place before they got there.
Oh, yeah, it was the whole state of Idaho that had to frame him.
Yeah, it's not that easy. They didn't have a file for Patsy with Brian's thing on it with a little package of DNA. So if you think things through, this is where I said earlier, thinking logically and then fact checking, you can see that it's not that easy to frame somebody. It's just really not.
And why him?
Well, exactly. Well, you could just pick out some other criminal in Moscow and nobody would bat an eye.
Blame it on KOHBERGER. He's dead. He needs all
yeah,
back.
I was going to say that too. Why not KOHBERGER? He's dead.
I mean,
solved.
For the life of me, they would never go that route, but I just don't understand this whole Brent Kopaka thing. I just don't. That's just me. I just don't
Why
see
not
it.
frame the real killers? Farley.
Well, I haven't read that. I haven't read that opus yet. No, that's when Viviana put that.
I know.
It was funny though.
And then they say no evidence, no evidence.
Bad cop. Let me respond to this. You say one bad cop, but do you ever focus on how many good cops were investigating this?
The state of Idaho is not going to take up for one bad cop. You better have 15 of them.
Right. I mean, honestly, if you say one bad cop, that's like saying, okay, this bad cop is a bad cop. We know that, okay? But how many people does it take to cover this one bad cop?
How important is
all the good cops there are? What about all the good detectives, all the good FBI agents, all the good people that are still out there that believe in justice for people to not be charged with crimes that they didn't commit? There are people. I work with them. I see them every day. So to say there's one bad cop that framed him, I mean, come on. And everybody else is going to say, yeah, let's get behind us.
Well, the ramifications, 12 gauge, of doing that is just it's laughable to me for everybody to be in on it. The DNA was taken away right away. And something happened to me last week. There was an open house at the crime bureau for the state I live in. They had an open house. So I went in there and talked to them about touch DNA. And it was very interesting. I said, well, how does this all work? So he was explaining it to me. I said, what if you don't have enough DNA? He said, almost all touch DNA is amplified or copied. I said, you can copy it, and even if it's degraded? He said, yes. He said, we can make enough samples that we can give other places to test and stuff, because I see a lot of that. They didn't have enough DNA. They're lying and stuff. And so I really grilled him, and he gave me some information that just was, no, we can do that. We can definitely do that. He said, now the question is, how long has it been out there? Because he said touch DNA only lasts about 2 weeks outside and about 6 weeks plus inside. So even if you have a file on Brian, it's not going to last long enough to use.
You know, get ready for the next round of rebuttal or pushback. There's already been statements about the jury going to be paid off. So if they do convict him, that's going to be their thought pattern is the jury was paid off.
Well, that goes back to everybody's built up in their mind that law enforcement is so corrupt. It's getting to stratospheric complaints now about that. And because of they keep hearing things that they think, oh, they're lying, they're cheating, they're just trying to get him. And that's just sloppy thinking in my mind.
I mean, I ask these people, and this is for anybody, you know, we all have our moments where we're like, oh, that person's guilty of this and that and the other, you know. But at one particular point, you have to ask yourself, good things do happen in the world, right? And if you really want justice for these 4 kids or 4 adults, and the right person is found guilty, whether you believe it or not, that is justice. If he is found guilty, that is justice for the families, that is justice for these kids. And if you really speak on justice for these kids, then you will accept that as being as it is and not try to jeopardize everybody else with your delusional thinking. Because if you're in it for justice, it's about justice for the 4, right? It's not justice for Brian. If Brian's not guilty, he's going to get his justice. People don't have to defend a person who is truly innocent. That's what I never get. If he's truly innocent, how come people are diluting the water so much? You get what I'm saying?
Well, here's my thing: is they want to yell no. What's the difference in him being guilty and somebody saying a cop is guilty? I mean, where's the, I mean, why is it so hard to believe he's guilty, but it's easy to believe a cop is guilty? And it's easy to believe a whole state of people is covering for a cop?
Hey, Nina, oh, sorry. I'm sorry for interrupting 12 gauge.
You're fine. You're fine.
Here's what I think. Let's say this was a corrupt police force. The one way they could do it that would make sense, be logical, and not hard to do. They could simply, once they arrested, they could have taken blood from the crime scene, went into his apartment or car, and put it there. And that type of stuff is going to show that he was in their bedrooms, not just hanging around or some stuff. That would be the easy way, but they didn't. If they were framing him, they sure did a stupid and hard way of trying to do it.
Didn't you say that, like, if they were going to frame him, they should have put blood smear on his car or something?
No, I would take. Let's say I was a corrupt cop, right?
Okay.
I worked, like I said, I worked with the military, police, and intelligence, and one guy we were talking about how you plant something. He said, well, if you go to a crime scene, if it's a knife scene, you're gonna have a lot of blood. You got a lot of product. He used product. He was talking in a business sense. Right. Just take a little vial, take some from each room. You could do it relatively easy, and then that blood would be DNA, that would prove it was, and you just break into his house, or if he's in Pennsylvania, you go to his apartment. You just take a little and you put it not in a conspicuous area, because Brian would have cleaned that up. You just got to put a few drops that he missed. And then you could do it that way if you were going to do it. But then you'd have to have all these people, it'd be a little harder, but it'd be a lot easier than planting touch DNA. That's what I would do.
Heck yeah, that's what I'm saying. You're gonna frame the guy. Get you some dang fluid. Do it with. Don't put no touch DNA.
Yeah. I mean, they would. That's what I would do if they really want to frame him. Because this way they don't have to have a suspect ahead of time, Nina. They got who they want. Okay, now we're going to get him, and they're going to find it. You know, just a regular forensic team is going to find it, and we're out of it. But they didn't do it that way. So I think it's still more of that. Everything law enforcement does is bad, corrupt. You know, if they were doing all this corrupt stuff, Judge Hippler would have, thrown this whole case out.
Yeah, I mean, they would have totally not allowed Moscow police to investigate, the state police to investigate. The FBI would have just taken over and investigated it themselves and even tried him, probably, if they had jurisdiction.
And if you got caught, that's the end of your career.
Yeah,
That's what I meant a few minutes ago. That I'm just going to give up my corporal badge so I can frame this guy. And here's the thing about it is, you've got that many people involved. Somebody gonna run their mouth, y'all.
Oh yes, definitely.
You ain't gonna keep everybody's mouth shut.
right.
Somebody's going
Right.
to the cops and saying, "I'm gonna cop a plea and rat everybody out."
Or they could just call the 911 hotline or whatever it was they had set up. See, this is another thing. Nobody's talking in that town, correct? Well, a lot of those people have graduated and went back home. Why aren't they talking now? They're
That's
never
what I was. Yeah, great point. Great point.
nothing. And this whole thing of the cartel or drug people are going to get you. I'm just not buying that, but that's my personal opinion. I just think that they could talk now, or they could show something to prove it. And
How
nothing.
they could write a book if they wanted. I mean, you know what I mean? They could have their own podcast and be spilling everything anonymously, I really agree that, that they didn't know this guy. That, the roommates didn't know him. The victim didn't know him. A lot of people in their immediate circle didn't know him.
I totally agree.
And that
The
is
only
not,
thing I disagree with is I think Xana was the first.
yeah. And I
Well,
mean, looking at Danny Rowland, he had a particular type too. His were brunettes because that reminded him of his ex-wife that left him. And from then on, he took it out on everybody that resembled her.
Nina, I respectfully disagree with she was the first. Not, it's just still opinion. The reason why it was because of her last TikTok thing, the noise from the room at 417. And I think that he was coming out of that room and heading out when Dylan saw him. It's possible, but I just, unless you have something, tell me why you think that. She's first.
Well, mine was more along the lines of, I think number one is I think she was the target. And number two is I think that, and this is just the way it plays in my mind, is that when she bent over to get the DoorDash package, that maybe he put the knife to her neck, carried her to the bedroom, and thought he finished her off and then did Ethan. And then because Steve made the statement, he didn't have to go upstairs. So if he's got Ethan and Xana, he doesn't have to go upstairs. So he ends up going upstairs, and then it says that he heard whimpering. I mean, that Dylan heard whimpering. And I think what happened was, and this, like I said, it's just my opinion, was as he's coming down the stairs, he hears Xana whimpering and realizes that she's not dead. And that's when he goes to her and says, "I'm going to help you." And then gives her that falsehood of he's going to let her live. And of course,
What about this idea then? All right. What if I think when he got done with each person, he would kill him right then and there. He's not going to leave. He's going to check. And who was the person that fell down, that thud in the room? Started Murphy barking. Who put that last text at 4:12? Xana
Right.
wouldn't be texting at 4:12 a unique post, that only she could have done, because then that puts him only a couple minutes to go upstairs and kill the rest.
Right.
And to me, that's what I'm trying to gather more hard data, like we did that last time, 12 gauge with Jeff. What happened here? Why can this happen, but this can't happen? In programming, that's what I do. We do truth tables. It has to be this or this. It has to all line up. And then, so I think that's what the police are following.
Yeah.
I
I mean, because if you put one piece in there that doesn't fit, you can't force it because it's going to throw the whole rest of it out of line.
Hopefully we can hear some of this stuff at trial. The stuff. And then too, Dylan, I don't know if, like they said in the PCA, it could have been Santa saying these things, like somebody's here. We haven't sorted that all out, so we have this gap of no information. Like I said, it's like the Kennedy 50-year gag order. Now, that was a long gag order, 12 gauge.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why I'm trying to want to know more. And I don't think it was a cartel hit personally. I just think
I don't think drugs are involved at all.
no. Chief Fry said
I don't think
this
so,
wasn't
yeah.
about drugs. And I think people need to know what's going to happen. If, say, Brian is found guilty, the people are going to come out and say, see, they did it. This was about drugs. They covered it up, and et cetera, et cetera. But I just don't see it. I don't see that house like a drug house. I mean, it was a party house. I can see that, but I don't think it was a drug house. Like you talked about that before, 12 gauge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've always said who is going to have enough drugs in a house full of sorority girls that's basically on Greek Row. It's a party house. Who's going to store that much drugs and money in a house like that? They deserve to have it stolen or whatever if they do that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah.
that's a lot of drugs to be worth 4 lives.
Well, there's so many different theories of what they were supposed to be in retaliation for Xana's mom, Kara, and Eddie's mom. But that kind of a murder with those type of people that were killed, and I say that type of people, these were just students. They weren't gangsters. They weren't, involved with the Hells Angels and stuff like that. And so that's what the thing about it, I don't think the drug cartels are going to be messing with them.
And they would have had the capability to wipe down all their DNA and not have any of their DNA.
Where's the
anywhere
calling card?
Yeah.
Or why didn't they commit a murder so heinous? If they wanted to send a message, why didn't they cut off their heads? Gruesome as that is. Why didn't they show? That's what they do down in Mexico. They really make a show of it.
Yeah. I mean, my thing was, I believe that the targeted part is that the target was everybody had to be in the house at the same time. Because the killer could have got any of these 4 anywhere at any time. People get snatched up outside their work all the time. They get killed inside their job. They get killed all over anywhere. So
I go with the house being the target.
Yeah, I mean, so to say that they were specifically targeted, I don't really get that because you can get any of those 4 at any time. You could get them coming out of the corner club. He could have, if this is the guy and he really wanted them, he
Hell,
could
he
have
could have
killed
took out
those
the
3
3 going down the
walking out of the
sidewalk.
corner club. Huh?
He could have took out the 3 going down the sidewalk.
Exactly. He took out 4 in the house, so Showalter was nothing like Ethan.
Right.
So
Exactly.
it would have been, so for people to say, well, he waited. Well, he waited for a reason. Whoever did this. I believe in my heart that it could be the person that's under arrest and been sitting in jail for the last 2 years. But, that's not a popular opinion.
But
I'm
that's
of the
what I stand
unpopular
behind,
opinion. I think he's guilty.
you know, because I believe that at any point in time, if he wanted any of those four, he would have had ample opportunities.
Oh yeah,
They were always posting on social media. He was at U of I in the student union, according to numerous reports. What was he doing over there? Was he watching other
Lurking.
people? Was he watching other people? Was he potentially setting up other victims? I mean, what was he doing over there? He didn't
yeah.
go to school there.
I could see him 12 gauge when he went in the house. Like I said, I think personally, maybe he had one person in mind. That was going to be it, quick and get out. He wants to feel, maybe like he said in those things he sent out, what did you feel? What did you do? And he wanted to experience it. Then I think Kaylee was a surprise, and I think Xana being up was a surprise to him. So, but I think when he left, he either didn't see Dylan or he did see her, but with that thud, and that dog starting to bark, he has to get out of there. He has to get out of there because if she called the cops, Dylan, he doesn't know that. He's got a mask on. He's just going to leave.
Oh yeah, I mean, by now he's probably a little tired.
I mean, have you ever had I know you have, Tom, but Nina, have you ever had an adrenaline dump where you're so high on adrenaline, like you've been in a fight or you're defending yourself and you just see red or you see black, and then somebody has to step in your way and shake you a little bit or say, or you have to get distracted enough to come back into reality?
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
That could have been Dylan at that moment. He could have been so into his adrenaline dump, rounded that corner, caught a glimpse of the door cracked, and thought, I got to get it together to get out of here.
yeah. I think
I don't
Xana.
know.
I think Xana just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and heard she was
Mhm.
maybe making noise. Maybe she went to the bathroom. Maybe he heard her talking, and that. And then he may have known Ethan was there. I don't think he did though, because he didn't see the Jeep, the truck out there, because Hunter had it. Um, he might. I don't know if he even knew that Ethan was staying over there.
Right, right.
But he could. Brian's not a small man. He could took.
No.
And if you come in and slice somebody on the neck, they're not going to fight. They're done. And if he pushed him back on the bed, and then he, like you said, earlier, the blood goes, you know, it starts forming like 6 little rivers out there. So, and then Xana might have been whimpering with that. I don't know. I mean, but he did take care of her too. And like we said,
I mean, I've never seen somebody stabbed and dying, so I mean, it could just be that's your automatic sound. I don't know if it's gasping for air. I don't, I've
well,
never seen it. You said you've
I've
seen
seen it.
people.
What it sounds like is a grunt. It's like, and what happens is your body is tensing up to stop the knife blade. It's, and that's, or if they're stabbed in the chest, it sounds like they're got the wind knocked out of them. There's the air is coming out from their lungs. But like I said, people can scream. I just never saw it during the fight. Everybody was so concentrated on fighting, and it's happening so fast that when we saw that Navy SEAL do that dummy, you know,
Yeah.
that proves that you can stab somebody. Now everybody tells me, well, they're Navy SEAL. Okay, instead of 30 times in 10 seconds, you could do 10 times in 10 seconds. You can do a lot of damage, and it's fast. Now, most knife fights aren't there to kill people. People get stabbed all the time, and most people will survive those because they're not trying to destroy you, cut you up. And
But as the coroner said, these were deep gouges, tears.
yeah, well,
Deep.
there's panic stabbing where you just lose control and you're just trying to stop somebody. You could punch them, you could hit them. I don't know.
Well, I mean, a moving target's going to be more there. To me, and I am in no way a knife expert, but to me, a moving target is going to be different stab wounds than maybe a girl laying there passed out drunk, not moving.
Unless he's a sadist. is trying to mutilate. I don't see that was what was happening, though. Who knows? Let's see. We got to see what the medical examiner says. How many wounds did each person have? So 6 to 9 minutes is plenty of time to do it.
Oh yeah, I mean, sit and do the stabbing motion for 1 minute.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yes. And like I said, we got to see how many wounds they had. There's just too much. I've heard that Maddie was decapitated. I've heard stuff like Ethan had his hammies cut and stuff like that. That's mostly comes from 4chan.
Yeah.
And stuff. What for would you do that? And if it was the frats, okay, let's bring the frats into it. If it was the frats, they would have left a lot of DNA because they have been drinking that night, smoking who knows what. They're not going to be planned. They didn't plan that out very well, and there'd be talking and much more evidence to look at them.
I mean, even if they were sober, Tom, the kids, I mean, I'm going to call them kids because they're kids to me.
Yeah.
I'm up in age, but, I believe that the kid today, they can barely fight fist on fist, much less defend themselves from a knife attack. You get what I'm saying?
Oh, I agree with that. Yeah, because now it's just get the gun out and shoot you.
Yes. So I would believe that, it'd be almost impossible for any of them to really defend themselves.
And who would ever be expecting it?
No, and somebody's in your house, you're going to be concerned, of course, but you don't know if these people are with Santa's group, they're with Maddie's group, and they're, had people over, something like that, and they're not going to be thinking, oh, they're trying to kill me.
Right.
Right.
And once they wake up and things are going on, there's no time to think. You're just going to go into your adrenaline's going to cause you to focus, to save yourself. I can see Kaylee trying to back up against that wall, try to get away.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff like that. I think it's just much easier.
Okay, well, here's my question, and I asked it on the panel earlier tonight.
Okay.
What are because I don't know the answer to this, but the chances of having 5 different DNAs mixed together, by the time they get all those mixtures separated into singles, is there a possibility that the results could have came in after the gag order took effect, therefore it couldn't be discussed?
You're saying that they could have found 5 different DNAs on a...
Yeah, because I mean, they say that when you stab somebody, the odds of not, injuring yourself,
Right,
So,
because you stab one and then you go to 2, their DNA is transferred to 2, 2 is transferred to 3, 3 is
right.
transferred to 4.
So by the time you get to the last one, you could have up to 5 DNAs mixed together. So now they've got to separate all those DNAs, right?
That doesn't take that long to do, Nina. They use
that's what I was wondering.
No,
is how long
it uses a process called DNA extraction. I asked that question when I was at the crime lab, and they said no. We can do that within like 5 hours easily, and they would do that when they got the Meridian lab.
Okay, that's what I was wondering is if, because everybody wants to talk about that, that single touch DNA, and I'm like, well, how do we know that that's what they got? That's just what they put in the PCA.
They might have it's possible they found something more. They definitely. I would think if they did, they'd have more of an arrest, though, maybe at this time. I'm just trying to work it all together.
Well, when it's all said and done, if they find any evidence that can place him in the house, around the house, any kind of object in his home that came from the house, anything found in the car that places him being in the possibility of being in the home, something from the home in the car, whether it be forensic evidence or any hairs or any fibers or anything like that, whether it be circumstantial or not, evidence is evidence. conviction is higher in that aspect because you're able to place the individual at the place of the murder. And that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about Linda Lane. We're not talking about Banfield. We're not talking about Grub Truck. We're talking about the inside of the home. If they're able to place him anywhere in that vicinity during that time of the crime and substantial evidence that matches the propensity of him being in that area or around that specific location or in the house from anything in the house, then that is more likely to gather a conviction than not. And at the end of the day, that's what matters.
Yeah. No, they're pursuing this case with what they have. Like I said, if they want to frame him, they can do the blood route. And they didn't. They didn't. And they said we haven't. When they said we didn't find XX in the car and apartment, if they wanted to lie, they say they did, and they could have put something there. And
Right.
that's why I think that's why to me this case is a lot more simpler than all the more elaborate theories.
Right, right. Because we don't know if they found a piece of the Dickie suit being cut, a fiber from that suit, if that's what he was wearing, any fiber that can be linked to something that the perpetrator was wearing, it's a wrap.
Cece Moore made a good point though, because she said that since Dylan saw the bushy eyebrows, that obviously he didn't have his eyebrows covered. She said they could have found an eyebrow lash.
Yeah, because these bad boys shed. Don't be mistaken.
But hell, who thinks about that? I mean, who thinks about, dang, I could have left an eyebrow lash. Is that what they're called? An eyebrow lash? An eyebrow hair? An eyebrow, what would that be called?
I said that in the video. I said, why didn't he wax his eyebrows off before he went into the home? Why didn't he shave his eyebrows off? I've had people come in for hair follicle tests that were going to be dirty. I'll shit you not. They shave everything. Their eyebrows, their nose hairs, everything.
Although he'd have a hard time 12 gauge when he went back to class. Where's your eyebrows, Brian? There's always repercussions of doing something like that.
I know. I get you. But you know what I'm saying? I don't know. You could have drew them on. People draw them on all the time.
Well, I have another question. So, what do y'all think about the theory of him being the DoorDash driver that's going around right now?
I don't think so.
See, I didn't either.
That would be too risky, and he's too smart for that. I know that people say, well, he didn't. Well, he was so smart. Why'd he take his car? But then I think of stuff like, well, what's he going to take to
Hey,
get
Jeff
there?
H.
His bicycle.
Well, if you're on your bicycle, that you're going to be picked up by cameras too, Nina, and that would even be more damning to him in some ways. There's no good way. There's sometimes if you're going to commit a crime, it's not going to be perfect in any way you want. He could have walked there from Pullman, maybe. I don't know, but I don't think
he could have put tape across his eyebrows.
Sorry. Could have. But see, what's the most logical explanation is that I don't think
really worry about your eyebrows.
I don't think he's going to worry about his eyebrows, and I think
he's not.
I don't think he's going to. I think he just planned it out enough, and maybe he didn't. The only danger is that when you're using a knife is you got to get real close, and that's when somebody can scratch your eyes. That's when somebody can do things that can pick up this DNA, and that now maybe they have something like that. I don't know. They would have to tell Anne about that.
Right. I mean, it's interesting all the way around. But I appreciate each and every one of you that's been in the chat, hanging in this long. This has been a long one, longer than I anticipated. But I hope that you learned something as far as being able to agree to disagree. We don't always have to have an argument or a fight. And Nina showed that on the panel she was on, and I appreciate her being an ambassador for the true crime community and being able to articulate her thoughts and actions without becoming belligerent or vulgar. She does
That's
have
it. I'm
warning label
changing
for
my
a
name to
reason.
Warning Label Ambassador.
And Tom, your expertise is always appreciated. I'd like to see you up here with Nina and Dr. Vanna. If you
It's
ever get a chance to see her up here, I'd like to
yeah,
have you up as well.
it gets hard for me because I do a lot of work stuff, and so I don't always
Yeah,
catch on. And sometimes I'll do it in the chat, not chat, but in the comments when I can. Weekends are probably better for me than
right. I
weeknights.
understand that. I understand that. But it's always great to have you on panel, and I respect your thoughts and opinions. The same thing with you, Nina. And we will have to talk about that presentation that you sent me. Those um that that work in my email. Did you send those to Dr. Vanna?
No, she gave me her email last night and I forgot it.
Yeah, I'll email it to you.
Okay. Yeah. Now, see, earlier, you know, I guess about a month ago when I sent you my theory, I think I sent you like 10 emails, one
Oh
right
yeah.
after the other. That's got all that in there.
Okay, I got them. I didn't
Yeah.
delete them. I got
Yeah. It's
them. I
about
got
10
a
emails
folder.
because it kept telling me I was trying to send too much.
Okay. And those of you that usually don't come over here and chat, you're more than welcome to come back. Even if I'm not discussing the Idaho 4 case, I've started to discuss the Matty Soto case, and it's quite interesting. So you're more than welcome to come and hang out here because we talk true crime as well. And if you've enjoyed yourself tonight and you understand that we agree to disagree and we can have a good chat, hey, welcome back. You're
Hey,
welcome back.
hey,
Okay.
Jeff, you got in here a little bit late.
Yeah, Jeff is fashionably late, but that's all I have for you guys tonight. So y'all have a wonderful night,
Well,
and I will
speaking of
see y'all.
Dr. Vaughn, have you read her? She posted her opinion of the Idaho 4.
Yes, I did see that. I did see
I
that.
haven't read it yet.
Yeah, I've seen that. We'll get into the shower curtain next live, Jeff. Be sure to bring your paperwork so that
That had to be a
we
big
can
shower
use the
curtain.
receipt. Buffalo Wild Wings, and you went out last night too. You balling, balling. But y'all have a good night. I'll see y'all soon.
Thank y'all for everything.
Thanks.
Goodbye, Tom. Goodbye, Nina.
Bye, you guys.
Maestro, cue that music.